Ready?
Hello.
Steady.
Go.
Tool checklist and running your workshop.
Tools. We love tools.
Tools. So we've done a lot of philosophizing
Yeah.
about getting to that point where you're like, okay, you have your intentions, you have your ideas, you've created these foundational values, you've kind of got a platform to spring off, and then you go, oh, might need some tools, which is certainly what happened for me. So I guess in terms of tools, I'm thinking about terminology.
Yes.
For people to know, even, I know people have told me, I go into a hardware store, I didn't even know what I'm asking for. And I'll often just have a picture of something saying, you got this?
Great idea.
Because there's a lot of language around this when people are starting to think about setting up their own space and getting a bunch of tools. Then you need to think, what tool? And there's so much. I mean, we've talked about this quite often. There's so much information, crossing information, unknown stuff that people think they should know that's not known, and assumptions that are made. So I'm interested to talk about the tool checklist in the context of sort of that starting point, and then later on, and the contexts between joinery and carpentry. How did you start?
I did have a set of tools because I'd been trained as a carpenter joiner and I'd already been teaching in the UK. So I had an idea of what tools I needed for what job.
But you'd had some experience teaching already in England for another mob, for another crew.
Yeah.
And so getting experience from that before setting up your own workshop.
Yes.
Yeah.
It made such a difference.
Yeah.
Other than going blind, if you like.
I think similarly for me, coming from working on the building site, I had a very building site mentality. Got one of everything. Make sure you can do anything you need. So I'm interested to talk about the tool checklist and the contexts between running one workshop, one type of workshop, versus lots of different types of workshops.
Yes.
And how to try and manage that. I mean, the thing that I think about in terms of the types of workshops that we run at Shedding, because there are people who are coming to upskill who are interested to get on tools and just get started. And so in upskill, our tool checklist, we start off with a pencil, steel rules in millimeters, squares, and I like to show them a mix of different types of squares. And we do the jack saw, the tenon saw, and the Japanese saw, and then drills and drivers. So that's the intro workshop, is all your measuring, marking, squaring, sawing. So what do you teach in your workshop? Because it's changed slightly from since I did it.
Measuring and marking out the same pencil.
Yeah.
We use a small steel rule. I introduce the squares as well, showing them the different types and reminding them that they need to check the square for square. It doesn't matter whether it was Grandpa's square.
So important.
Grandpa's.
Check your square for square, check your level for level.
That's it.
I didn't realise until I met you that I'd been using my red steel square.
Yes.
I'd been using that for 4 years, and then you said, that square's not square.
Oh, did I?
Brought it in and you said, this is how you check it. And I thought, I've been using a not square for years and got away with it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the difference sometimes between sort of building carpentry joinery.
Yes.
Or even building carpentry joinery. Because joinery, there is this level of precision.
Yes.
Which I felt that I learned in your workshop doing, using hand tools like chisels.
So we've got the measuring tools, the squares, and then we've got chisels and hand saws. Starting off on a lighter saw, and with a budget in mind, is much more palatable than starting with your old girl where she's really heavy, beautiful, last 200 years.
Yeah.
But to learn on it can be a little bit challenging because they're so heavy and you've got to steer them and this, that and the other.
Exactly.
So
I think that's an important point with tools in general. We start identifying, this is a good tool, this is a sharp blade. Yeah. Because I know a lot of people who I've spoken to have said, I'm really keen to get on tools. And I grabbed my granddad's saw and I've been trying to throttle this piece of hardwood and nothing's happening and I'm obviously no good at this. And so I'm really interested in the types of tools that we teach people to help them notice, I'm good at this when I'm using a good tool.
Yes.
And so I like to show them that we have blunt saws and sharp saws, and this is how they'll feel different, because the blunt saw, I find, is more of a than a jag, 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 jag. But it cuts so much more slowly, which I think people often don't think about. They just think, I just want to build a tiny house.
Yes, and I need a saw. That one will do.
Yeah. And that's the thing about having sharp tools, I guess.
And they're safe. You know, the sharper they are, the safer they are. If it's a blunt tool, you have to push too hard, and then there could be a problem with that. But so they need to be super sharp. And
that's an important point, being super sharp. A lot of what we're doing in carpentry is we're cutting stuff.
Yes.
You know, even the drill bits, that's a cutting blade on your cylindrical rod.
Yeah.
Okay, so hand tools, great.
I didn't mention the hammer and nails.
Oh, the old hammer and nails.
Yes.
So you've shifted, hey?
I have shifted, but it was a great source of delight for people to use a hammer and to realise just holding a hammer is a thing.
Yeah.
You need to hold it in the right place and let the weight of the hammer do the work for you.
Because I think the hammer and the saw are two tools that I see people learn and go, just sawing something or just hammering something, because I think we've picked up those tools perhaps from a younger age and messed around, but haven't actually learnt them, perhaps.
And they'll often say, oh my God, I've never put in a nail straight before.
Yeah.
I've always bent my nails, or I've always missed my nail.
Okay, so you were hammer and nails, and then you were hammer, drill and nails.
I could see that screwing things together made it much more accessible to people to go home and start. Because most people have got a drill.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about that, accessibility. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think about with our workshop, with shedding, and trying to create a place that is inclusive to people and different strengths and capacities and body parts and heights. And so I think about the tools that we're teaching in terms of students being able to take those skills that they learn in your workshop back out into the world. And I think about recycled materials, because everything we're teaching with here is recycled materials, and I actually very rarely use hammer and nails at all, because for me, I've put things together and I've also taken things apart.
And are you saying because you put it together with screws, it was much easier to get apart?
Yes. And also because we did a pilot hole for those screws. 4 years down the track, I think, I don't need a table anymore, I want a bench. Or I don't need that anymore, I want a footstool. And so I'm reusing and reusing.
Yes.
So I've tried to take apart hardwood furniture that somebody's screwed together with chunky hex batten screws, and the screw just snaps.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to teach people, let's do it in this way, not just for now, that we create something that's what we want, but also for later, to actually think about what happens later on with these materials, because timber's amazing. We can just use it over and over and over again.
Yeah. You know.
So for us with shedding, what I say to people is come to our 4-hour upskill and we will learn the measuring, marking, squaring, sawing by hand. These tools get you going. Once you can do that, you can saw stuff, you can screw it together, you can drill holes, you're good to go. And then we welcome people back for the construct workshop. So there's, I guess, that delineation for us, where then they come back and learn the power tools. So in our construct workshop, we've done the angle grinder with the cutting blade, we've done the circular saw, drop saw, table saw, clamps. Clamps is probably a big one.
You teach that on the first workshop.
Yeah. But we really get to use a variety of clamps in the construct workshop, because different clamps for different purposes. And that's the other part with the tools that I think we'll get into with running the workshop, is we create stations. And you do this too, hey?
Yes.
Create stations where you kind of come to a space and you've got a focus set up, as well as having your own tool bench. Workbench. So I think about the circular saw in terms of, well, I feel like it's so accessible to people early on. Same with the jigsaw, so accessible to people. Also with the jigsaw, you can cut timber with your timber cutting saw, and you can cut metal with a metal cutting saw. So you can be cutting roof sheets with a jigsaw.
Yes, I forgot about that.
So it's quite versatile. Same with the grinder. You can cut metal with a grinder. You can also sand timber. So that's something that I'm really interested to share with people, is that sort of versatility of tools across different platforms. So drills, drivers, and then we're also both teaching the drop saw.
Yes, that's a favourite amongst them. Terrifies them at first when they see the big teeth. So that's exciting, just going through that process and then watching them out the other side going, what's your favourite tool of the whole workshop? That big scary saw.
Just in case people are watching and they think, whoa, that sounds like a whole lot of tools with a whole bunch of names that I know nothing about. Where should I start? I guess I want to reference here that we already run workshops where people can come and learn those things. Your workshops teaching those tools, our workshops teaching those tools, other workshops teaching those tools, and also fabulous YouTube. So just for people to know that if they don't know the name of a tool, because there's so much information out there about all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it can also be very confusing.
Where do you start?
Yeah. So I guess it would be my recommendation for people to jump in and research, find stuff out, ask questions. I know that was a place where I started.